Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Riancho, and these are the best and worst matchups across the NFL at every position. I've shown you this content on the channel before, but not in this type of video. It's a new segment, and maybe I'll keep it, maybe I'll get rid of it if I don't like it, but we are going to go through quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and tight end and tell you which defenses are good and bad across the league. How many points they're giving up, not just on the season, but in the last month, and are they advantageous or difficult enough to where I'm trying to start or bench them if I can. So let me know in the comments if you enjoy this curated video where we're only giving you matchup stats. Usually I give you matchup stats for a specific position and then rank that position in the same video. In this one, we're giving you all four positions and just the defensive matchup stats all in one. So let's get it going. No time to waste. We are starting at quarterback with these stats. In blue, we have the season-long stats. This is the framework for every chart you will see in this video. How many points per game these defenses are allowing for those positions. But in red, if you're looking for some recency bias, if they're getting easier or more difficult lately, the last four games are depicted in red. So let's start at quarterback, Dallas at number 1. I don't know if I trust Geno Smith, but 2 weeks ago, he got a top 3 matchup against Jacksonville and threw 4 touchdowns. That game did go into overtime, but Geno Smith did pay off in a big upgrade. He could pay off again. Last time we saw the Cowboys play in primetime, Brissett looked pretty good. So I think Geno is a solid streaming option. I don't know if you're going to be willing to tolerate it. It is pretty gross when you think about it and all the turnover potential. But the Cowboys defense is just so atrocious. And even though they traded for Quinshon Williams, even though Demarion Overshown might be returning from the injured list, I still think Geno's going to have a good game. I just don't see anyone stopping Brock Bowers, and then I could see their receiving core get going, especially if the rookie Dante Thornton has a deep reception. Geno could have a really good game, but these are a lot of ifs. Geno's not a player you really want to bet on, generally speaking, but just like last week with Davis Mills, are you bold enough to make this decision? If you have to replace Daniel Jones in your starting lineup, I do think Geno offers some legit upside, but there's also some good matchup upgrades elsewhere. You don't have to be forced into starting Geno Smith, but the second best matchup goes to Aaron Rodgers. The Bengals were also on bye last week, so nice to have them back, and Rodgers did throw 4 touchdowns against them last time they played, so I don't know if it'll happen again. I doubt Freiermuth and the other 2 tight ends are all scoring a touchdown this week, but in a revenge spot, I could see the Steelers play well enough to get the win. But I think more likely if they win, it's thanks to their defense. Rodgers rarely ever gives you like 250 plus passing yards. I don't know if he's a lock in the lineup, but the matchup is an upgrade. Jacksonville is the best matchup in the last month, top 3 on the season. And last week we just saw Davis Mills drop 29 points against them. The week before, Geno Smith also dropped 30 points against them as well. That game went into overtime, but I don't see Justin Herbert not being capable of doing that either. So Herbert gets a massive upgrade this week. He also runs the ball, so he's a very safe start. And if Oronde Gadsden is healthy enough to play, the Jags matchup's also elite for opposing tight end. So Herbert's going to dominate. I honestly think I'm going to rank Herbert as my QB1 this week. He's been top 5 on the year, and this is the best matchup possible. They have a bye after this game, and I think they put on a clinic on offense. I trust Justin Herbert. The Jags secondary is hot garbage. So love Herbert, definitely starting him if I have him. Washington is the 4th best matchup this season. In the last month, it ranks top 3, giving up over 24 points per game, and we saw them get torched by Sam Darnold and Jared Goff in each of the last 2 games. So Tua Tagovailoa going to have a good matchup here. This game is in Madrid, so random shit can happen. The weather forecast calls for heavy humidity, and maybe that causes both teams to look a bit sluggish. But the Dolphins are from Miami. There's a lot of humidity there as well. I think they'll be fine, and I don't envision Washington stopping Jalen Waddle whatsoever. Achane also going to be very effective in the passing game. I like this spot for Malik Washington as well. Even Greg Dulcich, I think, could contribute. I think Tua gets a big upgrade. I like Tua as a legit streamer this week. As long as he stays healthy and upright, Tua should have a good game. I doubt he throws a pick. The Commanders' defense is that bad. But J.J. McCarthy, I think, has an interesting argument to be started this week. The Bears defense has been dog shit, especially against quarterbacks that run the football. Just look at Jackson Dart last week with 2 rushing touchdowns. I could see J.J. McCarthy scramble and keep the Vikings in this game. He won the game against Chicago back in week 1, and he also had a rushing touchdown. McCarthy offers a safe floor because of the mobility. So I like that from an upgrade standpoint. I do consider him a much safer play. I like McCarthy. I think Justin Jefferson could have an amazing game. Give me McCarthy as a top 20 play, a good flex play in Superflex. But Jordan Love gets an upgrade on paper that I'm not fully dying to endorse. On the surface, the Giants don't scare you, but this matchup has bad weather. The rain is expected to be all throughout in this matchup, 50% chance of rain in New Jersey this week. And with no Tucker Kraft, we know the upside's much lower with Jordan Love. With no Romeo Doubs, it was really, really low last week. So I don't think Doubs is coming back. I don't think Jaden Reed is ready to come back either. So you have to trust Christian Watson, who just came back from injury, Dontavian Wicks, who's a career 4th stringer, and then Matthew Golden, I don't know if he will play either. He didn't last week. So Luke Musgrave would be the 3rd best option. I envision this game as being a heavy run game script. The matchup's good for Jacobs. I don't know if I trust Jordan Love. They've not played very well on offense consistently. So not a safe start. The matchup's an upgrade, but if anything, I barely consider him top 15 in Week 11. Joe Flacco gets a top 10 matchup. The Steelers have been in a good spot, and Flacco had a good game through 3 touchdowns with like 26 fantasy points last time he played against Pittsburgh. So coming off the bye, he's going to be rested and hopefully fully healthy. I assume he starts. He's always an interesting streaming option, and he knows Burrow's coming back soon. The end of the road is coming. He has no hesitation. He's going to let it rip down the field pretty often. So Flacco gets an upgrade. Mariota also gets an upgrade. The Dolphins have been a top 10 matchup on the season, but in the last 4 weeks, they are down to bottom 10 in terms of matchups, down to 14.5 points per game allowed. And maybe Mariota isn't as tempting without Terry McLaurin, but he runs the ball effectively. The Dolphins defense doesn't scare me. In Madrid, I think he'll play fine. In fantasy football, I don't fear this matchup. So Mariota with the scramble ability probably gives you a rushing touchdown like he normally does. I think Mariota has a safe floor, will go over 16 points. But next best matchup goes to Drake Maye against the Jets, and especially given their trades on defense, I would upgrade Drake Maye even higher. Maye's definitely locked in to the lineup at this point in time. Top 10 matchup for him, and I think Kayshon Boutte also might be back in the lineup. The Patriots offense will be lights out on Thursday. Drake Maye, definitely a must start. The next matchup goes to Jacoby Brissett against San Francisco, and given the injuries on defense, they've been getting better and better week over week. In the last month, they're up to 22 points per game allowed. That would rank as a top 6 matchup overall, and I definitely like what I'm seeing from Brissett. But the news is that Marvin Harrison Jr. has been ruled out for this game, and that's definitely not going to help him. I trust Trey McBride, though, and I would still expect some contributions from guys like Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch. So Niners defense doesn't scare me. At home, I could see Brissett play very well, but last time these two division rivals played, it was a low-scoring game. That's also a possibility. With no Marvin Harrison Jr., you can't upgrade Brissett as much, but still on paper, a decent upgrade, definitely not a downgrade against San Francisco. But the next matchup is against Detroit, and that's for Jalen Hurts. He's always a lock in the lineup. A top 10 spot against Detroit. Hurts is definitely in your lineup. The next matchup is Tennessee, who are coming off bye. Maybe they step up a little bit, fix some of their problems, but in general, they're never a scary matchup at all. And CJ Stroud is starting to play in a better offense. Last few weeks, the Texans quarterback has had some value in fantasy. So given the Titans allow over 20 points per game in the last 4, I would expect Stroud to be a safe streaming option. I would start him, assuming he's off of the concussion protocol. Dillon Gabriel gets a tough matchup, though. The Ravens started off as an easy one, but in the last month, it's down to just 10 points per game. And on top of that, the wind is going to be a nightmare in Cleveland. So Gabriel didn't throw the ball first time there was heavy wind in Cleveland. Not going to happen this time. The Ravens will shut him down. No chance in hell I am trusting Dillon Gabriel. But Josh Allen gets a tricky matchup here. The Bucs probably play well enough on offense where this game is a shootout. I would expect some high upside for the quarterbacks. But on paper, it's a downgrade. The Bucs defense is really stopping opposing quarterbacks lately, but they didn't really stop Drake Maye last week, and I would expect Josh Allen to put up similar numbers, especially given his rushing contributions. I still like Josh Allen in my lineup, but the weather is a factor in this game. There's some heavy wind, about 20 miles per hour, and also a 20% chance of rain throughout the game. So perhaps that is going to be a problem. But in my opinion, it's just a factor of will his receiver step up? Kincaid might be inactive, and Shakir and Coleman are not that safe to bet on. So this might be a heavy James Cook game. If you don't get some touchdown passes from Allen, then maybe you're screwed. But he can also give you like 2 rushing touchdowns and doesn't matter. You're not going to bench Allen, but I don't know if I'm going to rank him number 1. I think this week I'd rather have Justin Herbert against Jacksonville than Josh Allen against Tampa Bay. Not joking. That is genuinely how I will rank the position. The next matchup goes to Caleb Williams, which on the flip side in the last month compared to Baltimore and Tampa Bay is way easier of a matchup. In the last 4 games, they're giving up just shy of 21 points per game. Minnesota is bad on defense in the secondary. So I like Caleb Williams a lot. His scrambling ability is also very valuable, and I think he will play well here against the Vikings in a dome. There's also no weather to worry about. That's also a factor this week. There's some gross games in terms of weather elsewhere. So let's avoid that. Let's play it safe with Caleb. He's been playing very well. He should be in the lineup. But the next several matchups I think are all relatively neutral. No massive downgrades overall at the position. But Jared Goff might have a tough time. The Eagles defense looked amazing last week, but in general, this game is more likely a shootout than not. So on the road, he played well last week. It's not going to be as good as the Commanders defense. I think the floor is good for Goff this week. But Justin Fields, I don't know if I trust without Garrett Wilson. The offense is going to be so predictable that maybe you don't consider this matchup a good one at all. Patriots should lock up the Jets on Thursday night, but maybe Fields' rushing value will save you. I doubt it. The Patriots can stop the run very well. But Matthew Stafford against the Seahawks probably finds himself in a shootout. I would definitely still start Matthew Stafford. That game is, both offenses are amazing, and I would expect a lot of points. Stafford going to keep up his MVP track record in this game against Seattle. I would expect him to throw at least 2, if not 3, plus touchdowns. New Orleans is on bye, but in the last month they've been a tough spot, so at least we don't have to deal with it. That's positive news. But then Dak against Las Vegas gets an average, somewhat difficult matchup. The Raiders, I don't really fear though. So in the dome in Vegas, Dak off the bye, I'm definitely starting him. Lamb and Pickens should play well. And then Bo Nix gets the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense is a tough spot. But in this division rivalry, I expect a close game, and I could see Bo Nix still give you that 4th quarter magic. I still think he'll have a decent floor. I don't think it'll be as bad as last time around, but could be dog shit. Nix is not the safest play. He's so up and down. Pretty random what you're going to get with Bo Nix. But Sam Darnold against the Rams, on paper it's a tough matchup, but just like Stafford, I don't care. It's probably a big shootout, and with Cooper Kupp in a revenge game, I assume that'll also give you an extra touchdown. So Darnold should be pretty good this week. I'm definitely starting Sam Darnold. And then Michael Penix gets a tough spot against Carolina. He was so inaccurate last week. I think they're officially going to start pivoting and just run it like crazy. So Penix, not a safe play at all. The next matchup is Indianapolis, so a tough one is on bye, thankfully. Don't have to worry about it. But then Jameis Winston against Green Bay, hard to trust against the Packers. The weather's a problem. Green Bay's a tough spot. And in the last month, they're allowing less than 13 fantasy points. Winston might be throwing 3 interceptions. That is not going to help you. So the game script will be fine even if he does throw a pick 6. But against Green Bay with no neighbors, I don't love the upside for Winston this week. A low floor. He's either amazing or dog shit. This week, I think we'll trend a little closer to dog shit. But Lamar Jackson gets a bottom 6 matchup here against Cleveland. It's a tough spot on the year, but in the last month, it's even more difficult. And then the wind is going to be really crazy in this game, 25 plus miles per hour in terms of wind. So last time in Cleveland, that really shut down both offenses except for the run game. Lamar will have to contribute on the ground if you're going to get an elite game. I would be downgrading Lamar in this spot. But next matchup goes to Bryce Young, a downgrade for him against Atlanta. Not an easy spot, and he's not safe in general, so not going to start him. Mac Jones actually gets a tough matchup. However, their secondary is really banged up. Last week, both top corners didn't play. So if Will Johnson and Max Melton aren't active, then I wouldn't care about this matchup. But on paper, it is difficult. They did really shut down Dak Prescott a couple weeks ago. But then last week, Sam Darnold torched them with their secondary out for the game. So the injury report will dictate the upgrade or downgrade. I am assuming Mac Jones will be the starter, but Trevor Lawrence gets a really tough spot against the Chargers, so not going to start him without his top two receivers. He needs to contribute on the ground, and I don't think that'll happen. Against LA, they're giving up about 10 points per game in the last month. Not going to start Lawrence. That feels like a nightmare. But Baker in a tough spot against Buffalo, I kind of don't care. While it's been the most difficult matchup the last 4 games, that Bills game is probably a shootout against Josh Allen. I would still expect Baker to keep up with him and be pretty good in fantasy. So he's still top 10. I'm not going to bench Baker Mayfield. And then it's tempting to bench Mahomes, but despite this matchup looking really difficult, with no Pat Surtain, it's not as scary as it could be. So Mahomes is still probably in the lineup based on name value. While he does get a downgrade, I would still probably start him. It's probably a low-scoring game, and it probably doesn't matter. In fantasy, Mahomes will still probably be top 10. But last matchup to mention is going to Cam Ward. The Texans are the most difficult matchup on the season, and Cam Ward has proven nothing. You're not starting Cam Ward. So that's it for the quarterback position. If you still have questions, let me know down below, but let's move on. Now let's talk about the running back position, where just like quarterback, the top 2 matchups were on bye last week, and it is nice to have them back. Cincinnati is the best spot possible. On the year, they are allowing 4.5 points more in the second best matchup. It's a massive upgrade for every running back against Cincinnati. So I am 100% starting Jaylen Warren this week. There's an argument that the backup Kenny Gainwell will have enough value as well. I could even see Caleb Johnson have a bit of a breakout. If they're willing to give him the rock and trust him, this matchup indicates he will be effective. So every running back going to torch the Bengals. I'm definitely starting Jaylen Warren against Cincinnati. But Tennessee is also a good matchup. They've given up the most running back touchdowns on the season. They're getting a little bit better lately, down to just top 10, just 21 points per game in the last 4. However, on the season, they still allow over 25. So that's still a good spot. I'm not going to downgrade Woody Marks or Nick Chubb. They are definitely players I would upgrade. And while Nick Chubb, I think, has lost his job as just a touchdown-dependent streaming option, I don't trust him, but I do trust Woody Marks to have a good game. I think he will find the end zone. I like Woody Marks as a safe RB2 against Tennessee. But the Giants are a very good matchup. They've been terrible at stopping the run, especially as of late, up to 31 points per game allowed over the last 4. So I am 100% trusting Josh Jacobs in this game. He will be lights out. A touchdown, I think, is guaranteed. And there's even an argument to be made that if they get up big on Jameis Winston, if he throws a pick 6 or 2, I could see Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks also contribute and also have high value. The Packers' run game should be lights out against the Giants. There is no chance that the Giants can stop them. So start Josh Jacobs. That is a no-brainer. He will be probably ranked top 5 this week. And then the next best matchup is so good as of late, it doesn't even fit on this chart. In the last 4 weeks, the Falcons have allowed 36.6 points per game to the position, and it's not just Jonathan Taylor that skews these numbers. Taylor scored 51 last week, at least in the subscriber league. That's what he put up. But on the season, they were looking really vulnerable. Heading into that game, the Falcons were still giving up top 2 numbers against the position. So it just got exploited by the best running back in the league, and it looked amazing. Dowdle has also looked unguardable at times. He is really hard to tackle. So the Falcons don't inspire any confidence. They're coming home from Germany. They could be tired and jet lagged. This is a perfect storm for Rico Dowdle, who has completely buried Chuba Hubbard on the depth chart. Chuba is lucky if he gets 5 touches. Rico Dowdle is the guy. So Dowdle going to dominate. He's had multiple 30-point games this season. I could realistically project him for another one against the Falcons. That is actually what they're allowing last 4 games. So Rico, a lock in the lineup, definitely top 10 this week, a massive upgrade against the Falcons. Bad run defense. But the next best matchup goes to Rachaad White against Buffalo. The Bills have been top 5 on the year, and in the last month, they're even giving up more points as well. So they cannot stop anyone. A touchdown, I think, will hit for Rachaad White this week, and there's also some good pass-catching numbers. I like Rachaad to have a big bounce back because last week against Detroit was a bottom 3 matchup. The Lions are very difficult. Meanwhile, the Bills are top 5. I expect them to really capitalize on this upgrade. So I like Rachaad White a lot this week. I know he's been a bit inconsistent lately, but the volume in Tampa should be good. There's also some bad weather, so good game script here. The wind is pretty heavy. They will be handing it off quite a bit. So maybe Sean Tucker vultures him and you kind of miss out on some high upside, but in general, the floor feels very safe for Rachaad White. I think he'll be pretty effective. The Bills can't really stop the run. So I like the Bucs backfield this week. Rachaad, I think, is a must start. And Ashton Jeanty, I think, is a top 10 play as well. Jeanty gets a very good matchup against Dallas, who are coming off the bye. Maybe they wake up. They did add Quinshon Williams via trade. However, I just still don't fear their defense. Matt Eberflus, not a defensive coordinator I care about in terms of downgrade. So gonna trust these stats. Don't just turn around off the bye week entirely. Ashton Jeanty's too talented and always gets enough volume. Even in a tough spot, Jeanty still puts up solid floor numbers. So Jeanty, I think, is bust proof this week. Very high upside. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he puts up over 20 points because they can't tackle him and he carries you to at least 1, if not 2 house calls. Like Jeanty a lot, a massive upgrade against the Cowboys. The next matchup goes to Baltimore, who are facing off against Cleveland this week. So Quinshon Judkins, not convinced he gets an upgrade here. The Ravens have really stepped up on defense since they've gotten desperate. In the last 4 games, the point total against running back is down below 17 points per game. So I don't know if Judkins will be that effective, but in general, Judkins is a major workhorse. And if you're telling me he gets like 75-80% of the volume, even if the Ravens hold the Browns to their average last month to 17 points, then Judkins still probably gets you like 13 points and a touchdown, probably covers your ass. So I still trust Judkins. The matchup is tough, but not that difficult where you're shitting your pants. And the game script should be good because of the weather. The wind is going to be a nightmare in this one, expected to be over 20 to 25 mile per hour winds. So last time the wind was crazy in Cleveland, Judkins had an enormous work share, another 3 touchdowns against the Dolphins. This matchup is more difficult, but still I don't give a shit. Volume will carry you and cover any bumps and bruises. Judkins, I would start against Baltimore in the wind. Next matchup, though, is much easier against Washington. On the season, they're still pretty vulnerable, but in the last month, giving up 26 points per game, that does rank top 5 in terms of upgrades. So I like this Commanders matchup a lot for DeVon Achane. Achane was already a lock in the lineup, but in this spot here, he's going to catch even more receptions. Achane will be lights out. I could see him finish as the RB1 in week 11. Definitely top 5 at the position. With no Jonathan Taylor, he is a lock in the lineup. Next matchup goes to the Commanders backfield, JCM, Chris Rodriguez, and Jeremy McNichols. Miami is a good matchup. On paper, you want running backs facing the Dolphins, but I don't know who is the guy you want. I believe it's JCM, but not by a lot, and Rodriguez has vultured him for 3 touchdowns over the last 4 games. So if there is a touchdown this week, then Rodriguez will be the guy. The only thing is the Dolphins have been this good of a matchup while giving up very few touchdowns on the season. In general, it's just yardage that carries you against Miami. Whether it's rushing yards or receiving yards, running backs who get the ball move it very effectively against the Dolphins, and then in the red zone usually fail to punch it in. So I don't know if I trust Rodriguez, to be honest. There's some value, but without a touchdown, you're fucked. But he probably vultures it from JCM, which caps his upside. And then JCM doesn't catch passes, never really more than like 1 or 2. So if you want the PPR value, that goes to McNichols, but he's also a complete non-factor at times. I think this backfield is so ugly, I don't want a piece of it, but the matchup is so good, I guess you could talk yourself into upgrading Jacorey Croskey-Merritt if you're desperate. But only if you're desperate. I'd be pretty embarrassed to start him. I would expect to lose, honestly, if I did start him. But the matchup says one of these guys might play very well. If I had to guess, I still think JCM is the leader in the backfield. But even though he leads the touch split, He doesn't have more than 50% of the volume. It's a three-headed backfield, and JCM is not a safe start whatsoever. So the matchup kind of feels wasted. I don't think I'll be starting a Commanders running back. I would fade them. James Cook gets a solid matchup here, though, against Tampa Bay. In the last month, they've been even easier, so does rank top 7 over the last 4 games. The Bucs' run defense is pretty bad. They also give up a lot of receiving yards, so I do think James Cook will contribute all over the field. And given the wind is kind of gross in this game, about 20-mile-per-hour winds as well, I think the game script is probably going to lead to a lot of volume on the ground. So James Cook leads this backfield with no real competition. He is a lock in the lineup always, and the matchup is a good one. Definitely an upgrade. Similar to Achane, I am probably ranking him top 5 this week. I could see James Cook finish as the RB1 in week 11. Next matchup is a solid, slightly above average matchup going to Detroit. Jahmyr Gibbs against Philadelphia should be just as good as always. But last week was concerning. The Eagles made a lot of additions and upgrades on the defensive line over the bye week. And with Jalen Phillips, the veteran that came out of retirement, along with just Nolan Smith, a first-round pick getting healthy coming off IR, I would actually fear Philadelphia. So not dying to upgrade Gibbs and Montgomery, but obviously you're always starting Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't know if Montgomery is a safe play this week, though. A touchdown feels a bit hard to bet on against the Eagles. Their defense, I think, is more legit going forward. Next matchup is against Chicago, so that's for the Vikings backfield. Aaron Jones, I think, is the more valuable, more talented player of the two, but Jordan Mason still factors in. Aaron Jones is also too old to have like a lion's share of touches, and against Chicago, they've been much more difficult in the last month, down to 15 points per game allowed. That would rank bottom 5 on the season. So not a good matchup at all. Definitely not excited to upgrade a Vikings running back. But last time Aaron Jones played against the Chicago Bears, he played very well. So did Mason. They kind of owned the game on the ground, and it will maybe look similar in this matchup. The game is at home, so weather's not a factor, but it's all going to come down to whether or not J.J. McCarthy can move the ball. But the Bears have stepped up in their run defense lately. I would downgrade Aaron Jones and Mason for sure. I'm not trusting Jordan Mason, but Jones is dynamic enough, could contribute in the passing game. Not dying to trust him feels like a tough spot. The Bears are difficult in the last month. But next matchup goes to the Niners backfield. So McCaffrey, always a lock in the lineup, but not playing as well lately, could kind of let you down. He got vultured by Brian Robinson last week, who is providing a big spark in this offense. B-Rob actually looks kind of efficient, looks pretty good. I think he's going to demand the ball sooner or later. So McCaffrey might go down. B-Rob is a very valuable handcuff, but probably a little too risky to start. The matchup, though, isn't scary enough to fully fade. Next matchup goes to the Saints opponent, who is no one. This week, the Saints are on bye, so that one's irrelevant. It has been a good matchup, though, as of late. The next matchup goes to the Jets, who've been neutral this year, so given TreVeyon Henderson just popped off, just had a major breakout, I would assume he keeps Ramondre behind him on the depth chart, but Ramondre was back at practice, limited earlier in the week in walkthroughs. He's a game-time call. If he does play, that could be a big problem for the touch split. It could be annoying as fuck once again, but I think TreVeyon has earned the lead back status. I still would start TreVeyon Henderson. But next matchup is the Niners, who are getting a little more difficult lately, but still relatively league average. Emari Demercado is now the guy to own in this backfield, but hard to trust him. It still feels a bit fluky, but the Niners matchup isn't terrifying. He should be fine, but not great against San Francisco. Las Vegas is an average matchup as well for Javonte Williams, so he's a top 10 running back this year. He'll stay in the lineup. Next matchup goes to the Falcons backfield against Carolina. It's slightly a difficult one, but as of late has been getting a bit easier. It actually ranks top 10 if you only look at the last 4 games. 22 plus points per game allowed by the Panthers' run defense. So Bijan is splitting touches heavily with Algier at the moment, and I don't blame them entirely. Algier looks good, but Bijan is so much better. It's kind of annoying that he's not playing too well last 3 games, but still relatively efficient. The floor is still safe. A touchdown would be nice, though, coming back to Bijan. I hope he doesn't get vultured again by Algier, but Algier offers some flex value. You could start him in a pinch if you're desperate. The Chargers have been an up and down spot, but lately more difficult. So not dying to upgrade Travis Etienne or Baishal Tootin. Etienne will get a lot of volume, but Tootin probably vultures him for that elusive touchdown. The next matchup goes to the Bears backfield against Minnesota. The Vikings have gotten a little bit more difficult lately just because they're getting really easy against the pass. But Swift and Monangai are heavily involved in this offense, so the Bears want to run it down your throat. I think they will. I would still probably start DeAndre Swift with confidence, but Monangai needs a touchdown, is still the backup, not an upgrade. I'm probably benching him. At best, a low-end flex play. But next matchup is the Colts, who are also on bye, so no relevance this week. They are out of the lineup. And then in Houston, that is a slightly difficult matchup. Now we're starting to downgrade teams just a little bit. So Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard in that split backfield, gonna have low upside. Yardage is not safe to bet on against Houston, but actually a touchdown almost hits every week for running backs against Houston. So if you choose right, if you get the right running back to score, then you'll be fine. I think it goes to Tyjae, but if Pollard is still the main guy, it wouldn't shock me. They're not giving up on Pollard. But Tyjae, I think, is more dynamic, younger, and more effective. I'd rather have Tyjae Spears rest of season than Tony Pollard. But this week, it'll all come down to touchdowns. Good luck getting it right on the goal line. Chase Brown gets a slightly difficult matchup against Pittsburgh, but did torch them last time he played against the Steelers. He had over 100 yards on like barely 11 carries. Maybe he's as effective. Last week, Kimani Vidal looked pretty good, but in general, at home, the Steelers defense has stepped up a bit more as of late. They shut down Jonathan Taylor 2 weeks ago at home as well. So maybe Chase Brown is not the best upgrade, but he's played well lately. I would still probably start him. And then against Denver, this matchup is a bit tricky for the Chiefs backfield. But the question is, will Pacheco be healthy enough to play? If Pacheco's active, I'd probably still flex him. But if it's Kareem Hunt or Brashard Smith, I'd definitely lower expectations quite a bit. Hunt would still be valuable for touchdown purposes, but Brashard Smith has no value, not going to start him. My preference would be Pacheco, though. I don't know for sure if he'll be active. At this point in time, I don't know what his practice reps will be later in the week. But the next matchup goes to Kimani Vidal against Jacksonville. It's been a very tough spot for running backs this season, so I would downgrade him, not going to upgrade Kimani. It's really easy to throw on Jacksonville, not to run it, but the Chargers offense is good enough where a touchdown is still probably a decent bet for Kimani Vidal. The next matchup against Kansas City goes to Denver, who are probably without J.K. Dobbins this week. He has a foot injury, so R.J. Harvey probably worth a start. The volume should be there for R.J. Harvey, but expect an increase in touches for Tyler Beatty or Jaleel McLaughlin. Probably McLaughlin, I think, has the better skill set of the two, but neither is safe. A tough matchup for everyone, and it could be the wrong backup that you pick off the waiver wire. I would wait and see before I invest in Tyler Beatty or McLaughlin. But my preference at this point in time is Jaleel McLaughlin. Good luck if you're going to trust him. I do like Harvey a lot, though. Rest of season, he could be a league winner if Dobbins doesn't come back. Kyron Williams, though, gets a tough matchup against Seattle. Corum also factors in, so not expecting multiple touchdowns like he scored last week against San Francisco. He does not play as well, historically, against the Seahawks. But Devin Singletary and Tyrone Tracy get a tough matchup against Green Bay. They're in a big time split, so not trusting either of them. A big downgrade here. And then Breece Hall gets this backfield all to himself, basically. But against the Patriots, it's a very tough spot. And with no Garrett Wilson, they're going to know where the ball's going. They will lock up Breece Hall pretty well. So not trusting him, definitely not upgrading Breece. If I can bench him, I will. But Saquon might actually be worth benching as well against Detroit. The Lions are no joke, the toughest matchup on the season, bottom 3 on the year. And last week against Rachaad White, they did lock him up pretty good. So Saquon doesn't feel that much better than a player like Rachaad White this season. He's not that effective at all this year, but a touchdown probably still hits in this offense. So if it wasn't the Eagles offense, I'd probably be benching Saquon, but on name value, I don't think I can do it, but I don't think I'm ranking him in the top 10. Charbonnet and Walker get a very difficult matchup. Only the Niners backfield has ever scored a touchdown on the Rams this year, so not expecting that for either Charbonnet or K9, not starting either of them if I can avoid it. I will. They're pretty low upside starts this week. And then the toughest matchup this season is Cleveland. That is going to Derrick Henry and Justice Hill. But I mentioned this with Judkins. The weather's a big problem. There's a lot of wind in this game. I would still kind of upgrade this backfield because of the volume. I could see 25 plus carries for Derrick Henry and even like 10 plus for Justice Hill because the wind is so bad and they just don't throw the ball. They're probably going to win this game like 17-6, and that means they're going to be running it a lot just to kill the clock and keep it moving. Derrick Henry on volume still probably covers you in fantasy, worth a start because of the weather, but not the matchup. The Browns defense is actually kind of scary. But that's it for the running back position. If you still have any questions, let me know down below. And now let's move on to wide receiver, where this chart shows you the exact same thing as those other two positions. In blue, season-long stats. In red, the last 4 games. And once again, the top matchup was on bye last week. It is nice to have the Cowboys back. A big upgrade for opposing receivers. But this week, they get a tricky wide receiving core to trust. The Cowboys get Las Vegas, and beyond Brock Bowers, I don't know if you want to be starting a Raiders receiver. They got rid of Jacoby Myers, so I think Trey Tucker is the safest guy, but Tyler Lockett had the most volume last week. I think he's the number 2, and that doesn't feel like a safe player to bet on. I think Lockett is more washed than valuable. They also drafted 2 rookies that have yet to pop off yet. Look out for Jack Betch and Dante Thornton to contribute as well. An upgrade for all of them, but other than Trey Tucker, I don't feel bold enough to be starting anyone. Trey Tucker is the only one I think benefits from this matchup. The next matchup, though, is Washington, who have been so ass lately. They're giving up over 41 points per game. Washington gets the Dolphins this week. The matchup for Jalen Waddle is elite. I am absolutely starting Waddle 100%. There is no chance I'm benching him. I don't care about the humidity in Madrid. Tua should play very well, and Waddle is his go-to option. I think 100 plus yards for Waddle is a lock this week. A touchdown, if not 2, should be expected. But I think Malik Washington is one of the most interesting plug-and-play flex options off the waiver wire. This Washington matchup is just so elite. I want a piece of it wherever I can get. I picked up Malik Washington, and I fully intend on starting him. I love the upside. The upgrade is massive for Malik Washington and Waddle. They're both solid starts. Waddle's a lock in the top 20, but Washington, I think, will have top 35 value, a very safe flex play, in my opinion. A touchdown wouldn't shock me at all. Some high upside in this matchup. The Steelers' defense is also atrociously bad on defense. They've allowed 40 points per game to receivers in the last month, and on the year they're still top 3 in terms of upgrades. So Jamar Chase, T. Higgins always in the lineup. Definitely upgrade them. Against Pittsburgh, I'm not going to overthink it. Even Yoshivas has some upside in this matchup. Tennessee, a very good matchup as well. Across the board, the Titans are dog shit on defense, so I like this matchup for receivers against the Titans. So upgrade Nico Collins of the Texans. I also think Jaden Higgins impressed me last week. 7 targets, a touchdown, 5 receptions, and I've been a fan of his since the summer. He's a player I'm hoping does live up to expectation in the second half. The rookie second half bump could be legit for Jaden Higgins. Christian Kirk is healthy, so the Jalen Noel experience I think is over in the slot. I'm more interested in Jaden Higgins, but it does look like this matchup will be valuable for more than just Nico Collins. A second Houston receiver can play well against Tennessee. My prediction would be that Jaden Higgins is the guy who benefits the most. Next best matchup is Baltimore, who on the year are a top 5 matchup, but in the last 4 games are getting a bit more difficult. Down to number 15, just 25.7 points per game, not 31.5 in the last month. So Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, a little more difficult matchup. I'm not going to upgrade them against Baltimore, especially with the wind. Dillon Gabriel gives me no confidence. I know Jeudy played well last week, but against Baltimore, I don't trust him, and I just don't envision enough volume in the passing game to save you. I just don't see the upside. I see a very low ceiling for all the pass catchers in this matchup. So no thank you. I'm downgrading them because of the wind. But even without the wind, I would not upgrade Jeudy because of the quarterback. I don't trust Dillon Gabriel. The Chicago Bears, though, are a good matchup this season. Top 6 on the year, top 4 in the last month. Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison should play well. Unless Jalen Nailor plays lights out for the second week in a row. Nailor was a problem last week, but I doubt it repeats consistently. But Jefferson has a track record of totally demolishing the Chicago Bears, especially in home games. With no Jalen Johnson, I see no downside for Justin Jefferson other than trusting J.J. McCarthy. So I think McCarthy will play well. I think Jefferson gets an upgrade. I think he will step up, and Addison also provides some upside. So if Nailor contributes again, you'll have a good game for Adam McCarthy. I like McCarthy because the upgrade for Jefferson, I think, will work out this week against Chicago. Las Vegas is a good matchup as well. So CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens already in your lineup. They should be even better than average. Detroit, also a good matchup. So A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, you've been trusting them. I like Devontae a lot more than Brown right now, but A.J. should contribute. I could see a big shootout in this game as well. The Lions secondary is not the strength on defense. You can torch them through the air against the Lions. The Giants are a good spot as well. So Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks expected to contribute extra with no Tucker Kraft or Romeo Doubs. I don't think Doubs is coming back. And Jaden Reed is also not healthy yet. So Matthew Golden might not play for the second week in a row. If that's the case, then Christian Watson looks pretty appealing against the Giants. But weather's a problem. It's going to be raining in this game. I could see the volume still not carry you enough with the Packers wideouts. Jordan Love is pretty inconsistent. Next matchup is Indianapolis, who are on bye, so sadly a top 10 matchup is off the slate. But the next upgrade goes to the Chargers receivers. Jacksonville is terrible on defense right now, especially against the pass. So I love this upgrade for Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, and Quentin Johnston. The big vulnerability for Jacksonville is in the secondary, especially for tight ends. And if Oronde Gadsden is not going to play, then I wouldn't upgrade Tyler Conklin enough to contribute and take away value from Ladd, Keenan, and QJ. So regardless of Oronde Gadsden's status, these receivers will play well. I love Herbert this week. A big, big upgrade for Ladd McConkey, Keenan Allen, and Quentin Johnston. The Niners have a pretty bad secondary. Their offense and defense is very banged up, even more on defense. So lately, they've been even better in terms of matchups. The upgrade is up to top 6 for Arizona. But it looks like Marvin Harrison Jr. is not going to play, so he can't capitalize against San Francisco here. I would still upgrade Michael Wilson and maybe even Greg Dortch. I think Zay Jones will be inactive. He exited last week with a leg injury, and I don't think he's coming back. So Jacoby Brissett has been solid, but Trey McBride is really the main benefactor this week. Michael Wilson, though, might be tempting a little bit in deeper formats, or at least in DFS. I would probably hit the higher on the target projection for Michael Wilson on Underdog. I expect extra volume to go to Michael Wilson. But the Patriots have been tough to run against, but kind of easy to throw against lately. A solid upgrade here for the Jets pass catchers, but Garrett Wilson is doubtful, not expected to play, and I don't trust anybody else that they have behind him. They have Tyler Johnson, Alan Lazard, A.D. Mitchell. Josh Reynolds is on IR, so no fucking chance I'm starting a Jets pass catcher. Tampa Bay is an average matchup this season, so solid spot here for Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman. I don't want to upgrade them too much, but also not downgrading them at all. The Rams are an average spot this season, so JSN, Cooper Kupp, and Shaheed should be fine. But if Torrey Horton returns, I don't know if I'm trusting anyone other than JSN with confidence. Kupp in a revenge spot is interesting and very tempting, but I could see him also be a decoy and not contribute very much. I feel like Shaheed is going to have a good game pretty soon. I feel like Shaheed will get a deep shot to click in this matchup. So that's interesting, but in Cincinnati, their secondary is pretty bad, and the defensive matchup is a good one for DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin, and Roman Wilson. But other than Metcalf, it's hard to bet on any one guy. The matchup is much better for tight ends. I'd rather go Freiermuth than Roman Wilson or Calvin Austin. But in Buffalo, the matchup's solid, pretty average for the Tampa Bay pass catchers. So Egbuka, a lock in the lineup. Tez Johnson played lights out last week. I could see some heavy shootout potential. I would upgrade Tez Johnson a little bit as well. But Arizona, a solid spot here, so no upgrade or downgrade for the Niners pass catchers. Juwan Jennings and Kendrick Bourne should be fine. But this matchup, I think, is dependent on the health of the corners. Last week, Will Johnson and Max Melton were both out against Seattle, and Darnold had his way against them. It will probably happen again if they're out for the second week in a row. But if they're back, then maybe Juwan is not as exciting against Will Johnson. But next matchup is New Orleans, who are on bye, so that doesn't move the needle. Next matchup is the New York Jets, who do rank 20th on this list, so a slight downgrade here for the Patriots pass catchers. I really trust Drake Maye, though, and with no Sauce Gardner, this matchup is probably easier going forward. So not going to worry too much about Stephon Diggs. He should be fine. The only question is, will you trust Pop Douglas, Mac Hollins, or Kyle Williams if Kayshon Boutte is inactive again? It does look like Boutte has returned to practice, though. I think Boutte will play. So if he does, he's probably the safer bet behind Stephon Diggs. I still think the Patriots receivers are going to be fine against the Jets. But next matchup, now we're starting to get some slight downgrades, but still a bit neutral. The Green Bay matchup for Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton is more exciting now that Jameis Winston is the quarterback. With Russell Wilson, I'd feel pretty gross about it, but even without Jackson Dart, there is some upside because Winston just chucks it deep. So Packers might have some trouble on their hands, but probably catch a pick six and eventually take their foot off the gas on defense. I think there'll be some good garbage time for the Giants pass catchers. But next matchup goes to Detroit against Philadelphia. Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams are safe bets, especially now that Dan Campbell's the play caller. I do see them incorporating Jameson Williams a little more consistently. That was the problem with John Morton calling plays. With Campbell, they went back heavily to Jameson Williams. So I'll still start them, but on paper, it's a minor downgrade. Next matchup, though, is a bit difficult against Cleveland, especially because of the wind. I would definitely downgrade Flowers and Bateman with the bad wind. The Browns are scary. So no thanks there. Weather is the main reason why, but on the season, it's also just been a downgrade in the first place, so that's tricky. The Vikings, however, have been difficult on the year, but in the last month have been a great matchup for opposing receivers. Up to 32.5 points per game allowed by the Vikings in the last 5 games. That ranks as a top 5 matchup if you only look at the last month. So Minnesota starting to stop the run a bit better, but really terrible at stopping receivers. I would upgrade Rome Odunze, DJ Moore. Last 2 weeks, Rome and DJ Moore each have a bagel. They've traded off in that department, and maybe you're not trusting them as much anymore. But I like this matchup a lot for Caleb, but there's no weather either. And given some wind in some tough spots, I would still trust Rome Odunze and DJ Moore. I think they're safe starts against the Vikings. Bad secondary. Next matchup goes to the Rams pass catchers, who you're always starting. So Seattle's a bit tricky, but Puka and Adams still remain in the top 10 wideouts. Next matchup is Atlanta against Tet McMillan, Leggett, and Coker. So not dying to trust them. The Falcons have been tough in certain spots, but you can throw deep on them. Alec Pierce was amazing against the Falcons, but Pittman not as good. And then Josh Downs actually played like dog shit, if not for his contributions in special teams. But Pierce played well. There could be still one receiver for the Panthers that plays well against Atlanta. In this same matchup, though, Carolina has a good secondary as well, so I'm expecting a lot of run game script, a lot less passing in this game. I would downgrade London and Mooney, but still going to start Drake London. The volume is elite for London. It sucks for everyone else. These last 5 matchups, though, are clearly the bottom tier matchups and definitely big downgrades overall. I don't want to upgrade receivers against Miami. The stats have been gross this season, so I'll trust them. The Dolphins actually have a secondary that can't stop you. So maybe you don't care, maybe you don't trust these stats, but last week, Shakir and Coleman did play well. With a matchup-proof quarterback, it probably doesn't matter, but with Mariota, I don't think that moves the needle enough to not care about this downgrade. Debo and Treylon Burks might be less valuable against the Dolphins. Kansas City, also a tough spot for Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, and Marvin Mims. Pat Bryant also contributes, so not trusting Cortland Sutton, definitely just a low-end flex play against Trent McDuffie. Honestly, Franklin has been more valuable over the last several games. But next matchup, bottom 3 here for the Titans pass catchers against Houston. Maybe Ridley will return to the lineup off the bye. He could be healthy with his hamstring injury, but I don't trust him. Against Derek Stingley, the wide receiver 1 of Tennessee, will play like shit. So no thanks. If I can avoid it, I will. But if not, Emari DK, I think, has the most value above Ayamanor and Van Jefferson. The Chargers are a tough spot this season, especially for wide receivers, so not upgrading the Jags pass catchers with no BTJ, most likely he'll miss, and no Travis Hunter. Parker Washington is the most valuable, but Jacoby Myers not that valuable either. Both get a big downgrade against the LA Chargers. And the biggest downgrade this year is Denver, but with no Pat Surtain, it's obviously not as difficult. I would still probably start Rashee Rice, but I don't think I'll press my luck with Worthy, Hollywood Brown, or Juju Smith-Schuster. The Broncos still have a good defense overall, and who knows, maybe the rookie Jahdae Barron out of Texas, first-round pick, can contribute in the secondary. I would still start Rashee Rice, but I don't trust the other receivers against Denver, even without Pat Surtain. So that is it for the wide receiver position. If you have any lingering questions, let me know down below in the comments. And now the final position to mention in this video is tight end, who are a little more straightforward. There are some really good matchups that have consistently been good all year, and I have brought those up in terms of touchdown receptions. That's really what moves the needle the most at this position. So up top, the number 1 matchup this season has been Cincinnati, the best tight end matchup overall, and they just can't stop surrendering touchdowns to the position. The last time Rodgers played them, he threw 4 touchdowns, all to tight ends. So Geno Smith and Pat Freiermuth get a big upgrade. I prefer Freiermuth for some down the field upside, but both I think could score a touchdown this week. I like both tight ends as interesting flex plays. My preference, though, is Pat Freiermuth. Jacksonville is the second best matchup, especially for tight ends. It's been a gold mine as of late, so Oronde Gadsden will play lights out if he's healthy enough, but last week he went down with a quad bruise. I could see him miss this game, and maybe Tyler Conklin gets a big upgrade. Conklin is my dark horse. If Gadsden doesn't play, though, I think it's a little hard to bet on Tyler Conklin. Noah Fant gets an upgrade against Pittsburgh. He also scored a touchdown last time he played them, and he has good chemistry with Joe Flacco. He's been playing well. I would consider Noah Fant an interesting plug-and-play if you're desperate. More so a DFS option, though, rather than season-long. Miami is a good spot for tight end, so Zach Ertz should play well, but given the injuries at receiver, last couple weeks they've been using kind of tight end by committee. Ertz is still the main guy, but if you told me Ben Sennett or John Bates factor in, it wouldn't shock me. Last week, Sennett scored a touchdown, and I have been waiting for this year 2 second-round pick to emerge. Sennett could be a problem rest of the season, but Ertz gets an upgrade. I find him more compelling. Then the Seahawks have been a good matchup all year. I've liked streaming tight ends against Seattle. However, the Rams are operating with a big committee at tight end. They are using all 4 of them. It's not just Higbee who does lead the charge, but also Terrence Ferguson, Davis Allen, and Colby Parkinson. It's rare that any of them get less than 2 targets. However, it's also rare that any of them get more than 4 or 5 targets. The volume isn't high enough to really contribute. So Higbee, I think, is the main option, but kind of capped in terms of upside. The player that's getting targeted down the field and could offer a house call is the rookie Terrence Ferguson. The second-round pick is a player I like a lot, and maybe he's the most valuable, but all 4 of them contribute, and if it was one guy, I would love them this week, but with all 4, I'll probably fade them and avoid this tight end room. It's just a little too crowded with all 4 factoring in. Greg Dulcich, though, I think is the only tight end that factors in at all in Miami, with Darren Waller still on IR. He's the guy you would want, and this Commanders matchup is great. Last 4 weeks, they've allowed 19 points per game to the position. So Washington looks like a major upgrade, and Tua, I think, will play very well. The secondary for the Commanders is dog shit, and there are very few pass catchers beyond Waddle and DeVon Achane. It can't just all go to Malik Washington when they're looking for the third option in this offense. So Dulcich has been a guy I've liked in the past, but has never really put it together. I think this is one of the few spots where he could actually impress you. A 1-week plug and play. He does have flex appeal against Washington. The matchup indicates he's got upside. The next best matchup is on bye. The Colts are irrelevant this week, so a good matchup is unavailable. They give up a lot of yards to the tight end position. The next matchup, though, is Carolina, who do rank top 8 this year, but getting a little tougher lately, down to number 20 in the last 4 games. So Kyle Pitts, not a safe upgrade in general. On paper, he's a bit safer, but in general, I never feel confident starting or endorsing Kyle Pitts. No thanks. I think I'll still fade Kyle Pitts. TJ Hawkinson does, but Colston Loveland against the Vikings gets a solid upgrade here, and he's been really contributing more the last 2 games. So with the injuries to Cole Kmet, I would trust him even more. I still consider him an interesting option off the wire. If he's still available, I would pick him up. He has some of the highest upside at the position you can find. A first-round talent, drafted 10th overall. The Bears liked him more than Tyler Warren. So if he can keep it going in good matchups, I do want to start him. He has amazing upside, and I could see him really play well against the Vikings. So should offer some upside. I think at the very least, he's a top 15 option in the rankings. I do not worry about Cole Kmet anymore in Chicago. Next matchup goes to Mason Taylor against New England. The Patriots, though, will know exactly what's coming. With no Garrett Wilson, it's really easy to bracket Mason Taylor, stack the box on Breece Hall, and let Justin Fields beat you with someone like Allen Lazard. So Mason Taylor going to have a shitty time. The Patriots defense will clamp down against the Jets. So no thanks there. Even in an upgrade on paper, I do not give a shit. Do not start Mason Taylor. But Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger get a somewhat average matchup here against Green Bay. Now we're getting into the neutral zone, and I kind of don't care. I'm just kind of trusting talent at the position. So I do like Theo Johnson a lot, but I think with Winston, the upside doesn't go away, but the floor kind of evaporates. And then the next matchup is a player who's a lock in lineup. He's the tight end 1 this season. Trey McBride will play well against San Francisco. With no Marvin Harrison Jr., McBride will get at least 12 plus targets this week against the Niners. The Rams are a solid matchup, pretty average this year, so AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo should contribute as always. And then TJ Hawkinson gets an average matchup against Chicago, but in general, I don't trust McCarthy enough to start TJ Hawkinson. So no thank you with him. The revenge game touchdown against Detroit was nice, but in general, I'm not betting on it. The next matchup is on bye, so New Orleans doesn't matter. And then Arizona goes against Kittle. That's a neutral matchup. Kittle looks amazing. Last week, he caught all 9 of his targets, and that toe tap touchdown was really impressive. Loved what I saw from Kittle. He is looking elite now that he's fully healthy, as expected. But Bowers always a lock in the lineup. He gets the Cowboys, who have a bad secondary, so Bowers definitely going off against Dallas. And then the Giants are a relatively neutral matchup as well. So with the injuries in Green Bay, Luke Musgrave will contribute. Definitely some added volume expected to go to Luke Musgrave. Then Dalton Schultz gets the Titans in a neutral matchup. So if you've been trusting Dalton Schultz, I think he'll remain in the top 12 rankings at the position. Schultz has been really reliable from a volume standpoint. He's been pretty safe, but touchdowns don't usually hit with Dalton Schultz. Dallas Goedert gets an average matchup against Detroit, who's been amazing this year, so Goedert will be a safe start as always. And then now we're starting to get into the slight downgrades. Less than 10 points is the projection for these tight end cores collectively. All the tight ends on the opposing teams will average less than 10 points against these defenses. So the Patriots go up against the Jets this week. If Austin Hooper contributes, then Hunter Henry is definitely not going over 10 points. I don't know if I'm dying to start Hunter Henry. It's looking pretty crowded in the Patriots offense, and without a touchdown, he is just not that valuable. Hunter Henry is just a floor play, just a backup at the position. But David Njoku and Harold Fannin get a slight downgrade with the wind. I downgrade them even further. I wish there was just one. They eat into each other quite a bit. But in the wind, I don't trust Gabriel to throw many passes. I will fade both pass catchers like I did against the Dolphins when the wind was shitty. It worked out last time. I assume it'll work out again. Fade Njoku and bench Harold Fannin. Kincaid, I want to fade, but I think he's not going to play. It looks like he's doubtful, got injured, and that would be a upgrade for Dawson Knox in terms of volume. But the Bucks are a tough matchup, so not dying to start him. I think I'll keep him on the waiver wire. And then Travis Kelce gets Denver this week. But if you look at the last 4 weeks, the Broncos have actually been giving up a lot more points to the tight end position. They would rank as a top 10 matchup in just the last month. So Kelce should be fine. The yardage, I think, will be there for Travis Kelce. If anything, they'll be limiting the receiver position. And then the Chiefs have also been a bit more vulnerable to tight ends as of late. They rank bottom 10 on the year, but top 13 in the last month. And Evan Ingram maybe is a bit safer than you might think. Ingram might still be okay as a solid flex play, but not a top 10 tight end, just a floor play in general. And then these last 7 matchups are ones I would be avoiding. Brenton Strange comes back to the lineup off IR, but against the Chargers, not a good spot. And I don't know what to make of this pass catching rotation. So let's wait and see what the Jags receiving core does. I could see them all look like shit against the Chargers in a bad matchup. So let's wait on Strange, but at least he's coming back to the lineup. That could be valuable down the stretch. And then Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are not safe plays in the bad win. The matchup against Cleveland is already a downgrade, and they're also kind of eating into each other. If you don't get a touchdown with Andrews, then you get nothing from anyone. So no thanks with them this week. The wind will limit the targets. And then Okonkwo against Houston, a bad matchup for Stroud, bad matchup for him. I'm not starting Chig Okonkwo, especially if Ridley were to return to the lineup. And then Jake Ferguson against Las Vegas. For whatever reason, the Commanders know how to stop the tight end position. So they are not a good matchup here. Jake Ferguson on paper gets a big downgrade, but he's been good enough this year. The name value is still probably worth starting. I'll still probably rank him in like the top 12 or 13 at the position. Ferguson can't be faded too far, but against Las Vegas, the stats suggest you shouldn't expect more than 7 points from Jake Ferguson this week. Laporta also not expected to get more than 6 or 7 points. The Eagles have been elite at stopping opposing tight ends. Every time I've recommended a tight end because I just trust them against Philly, I have been wrong. I've noticed the Eagles actually really can stop you at tight end. So Laporta, very tricky this week, not a lock in the top 10 rankings, but Jatavion Sanders, no chance in hell I'm starting him. The Falcons are a terrible spot, and Bryce Young scares me a lot. And then lastly, Cade Otton gets a really tough matchup against Buffalo. They're allowing less than 5 points per game to the position. So with the wind factoring in, Cade Otton, not a safe start, a big downgrade overall for Cade Otton. I'd probably just bench him if I had him. He's just a backup in the first place. So that is it. Those are all of the matchups this week at all 4 positions. If you still have questions, let me know in the comment section down below. I'll still mention the stats, but wanted to specifically devote a video to just these matchups. Maybe y'all will like it more than how we were approaching it before. But if you don't, let me know in the comment section. I can always go back. I wanted to try this out, and we will see what happens. I still have a few more weeks where I'm tinkering with the schedule. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I'll see you next time. My name's Adam Riancho, and thank you for watching Nice and Blunt.